Hello. Hey, everybody. We are live once again with my co host Ty and our special guest. You may remember her with our earlier episodes, Miss Shawnette. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for our guests that are coming on now, coming on later in the future. Thank you. I want to do two updates. One is just talking about the people who have been passing away and been affected by the wildfires that are affecting California, and it moved to Oregon, which I had no idea that it was spreading that bad, but there have been casualties, and then definitely our hearts go out to those family members who happen to be going through that. And then I want to give one more notice. I actually joined a therapy group. For you guys who don't know, my son went and joined the military, and I don't know how to handle it. I know that there have been many people, such as my cousin here, who has a son who's in the military, and even though I'm prior service myself, I just don't know. I didn't know the effect it has on you when you can't hear that individual's voice anymore, compared to when you're getting tired of them because they didn't do the dishes. You like, get the hell out of my house. But no. I heard from him today, and I'm so thankful. I was filled with joy. I love you, Deontay. Just giving a shout out. You can't hear you. I love you so much. All right, pass it on to Ty.
It'll be okay. Guys, you know my quick update. Follow us on YouTube, Mothers Unfiltered. Press the subscribe button, like button, ... And today is going to be a very great show.
Yes. So we have our guest Shawnette, and I wanted to bring Shawnette on because I wanted to do a recap of renewal and refocusing, because we talked about so many different topics from the time we started, and we've gained so many viewers, and I've had comments from all different types of avenues and areas. And I say, you know what, let's refocus. The upcoming episodes will all be about preparation and just where do we go and these things, but I don't want this to be a segue. So definitely someone who the audience loves.
Yes.
McGee, thank you, aka she my cousin.
Thank you,
So thank
guys.
you for coming on. Is she there? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
okay.
so grateful. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really happy. You guys are doing an awesome job. So I'm always glad to tune in with you guys and see what's going on. And I think it's a good idea to do a recap because each week, each day, each month that passes, we are dealing with a lot and we're processing a lot. Some new information, some old information. We're sorting through things. We're pruning some things. We just straight up throwing some things away. But at the end of it all, right, we're trying to figure out what now?
Mm-hmm,
What now? And so
mm-hmm.
this is really good to kind of recap and then figure out what now. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So with that being said, and so our audience, we're going to be jumping around. And what I mean by jumping around, we've had many different topics come up in our podcast. So we're just going to be touching bases with all of them. So just to kind of jump into there, I wanted to talk about one of the topics that are really is on all of our hearts. Was one of the guests we had was Faith, and we were talking about the domestic violence. And I remember talking to you, Shawnette, and we were saying we didn't talk too much about the children aspect and how the children go through what they go through. Of course, as the victim, as the survivor, we go through certain things, but we never hear that perspective from, the children's. How do they heal? How do they handle? Can you touch a little bit about that in regards to the kids and how they deal with experiencing it? How do they heal from those type of who do they run to?
Exactly. That's a very important thing. And see, this is not only happening with spousal abuse or partner abuse in a domestic violence situation. This happens with any type of breakup. This happens with divorce. This happens when two best friends are close for 20 years and then they have a falling out and the children are witness to it, or the children are somehow affected by it because they too have a relationship with this individual. So this happens anytime that there's conflict or there's an issue in a relationship and the children have a relationship with the individuals. What do we do when there's a breakup? Do we sit down and talk to the children about the fact that Miss Kathy not coming over here no more?
Right.
Do we tell the children Miss Kathy stole my rent money? Or what do we say? What do we do? Most of the times, unfortunately, we don't say anything to the children. We have the mentality a lot of times that children don't need to know what's going on in our business. But again, when the children are a part of that business, when they have a relationship with the individual, then this needs to be discussed. So, specifically with domestic violence, we have, as you said, many resources for women who are victims of domestic violence. There are support groups, there is counseling, there are safe houses for families, and there is support and there are uh, counseling resources available to children. But at the same time, there are rarely any peer groups that children can be a part of where they can get peer support. So here you are going to school, perhaps you've missed 3 days because of a domestic violence situation, and somebody says, "Hey, where you been?" You don't know what to say, you don't know how to respond, or maybe somebody's dad is coming up for the father daughter dance, and your dad might be faced with some domestic charges, or your mom might be faced with some charges. And so, even though these children sometimes do have a person with their parent, with the victim, they might be able to attend some of the sessions, or there might be sessions for the children, but there still need to be other support systems in place for these children. So that means with the school, and some people say, I don't want the teacher in my business, but the teacher can support your child when your child breaks out in tears
Right.
during the Dance with My Father song, right?
Right.
Or and mommy and daddy has just gotten divorced. And so I think it's important to have a partnership with the schools, with the doctor. The doctor can help if there's a notice in physical changes, right? What's going on. And if you have a spiritual group or a faith-based group that you're a part of, I think it's important to garner support from those people, family members, neighbors. I mean, I am focused always on community because it does take a village to raise a child. It does take more than one person to provide what a child needs.
Mm. And you, I don't want to step over. You want to say something, Ty? Okay.
Go ahead.
Interesting that you said that. And in regards to the community helping raising the child and that old mindset, even though it's accurate in a way, especially now that it's 2020 and things are crazy, and you have so many different types of people like, hey, you better not talk to my kid, and why are you getting too close to my kid? You know, how would you respond to a parent who's a little bit, or or somebody who's the guardian? How would you respond to them if they're a little bit cautious and saying, hey, don't get too close to my child?
Well, I do think it's important to be cautious of our children, right? We are their protectors. So I think it's important for us to not be overly giving when it comes to information about what's going on. We don't want to overshare, but at the same time, we want to be careful about being too rigid because we might block off our help. And so I think if a parent either does not have support at all, there's no one I can speak with, and or there is no one that I can trust, then I think it's still important for the parent to speak with the child one on one, you and me, you, me, and the siblings. Let's talk about what you feel. Let's talk about what you think. You'll hear a lot of times the children say, if I had done my homework, daddy wouldn't have hit you. Or,
Oh,
we all got in trouble because we were making too much noise when mommy came home from work. and she got mad and this happened, and so they kind of think maybe it's my fault. And so really and truly, just to talk about disputes or conflicts or straight up fights that happen is important. Think about when you were a child and your perception of what was going on around you,
Right.
to only become an adult and go, man, I was silly back then. I used to think that, this or that. And you realize that, okay, now I'm grown and I know better. But for a child, how do they process what we as adults are still working to process? They're
Mm-hmm.
not able to do it alone. And so I say to the parent, talk to your child, be honest with them, say things like, I'm scared too. I don't know what to do. I'm doing be honest with them. I'm angry sometimes as well. I too wish things would no, but it isn't your fault. Well, the real thing is that, this is about, and I mean, just talking and helping to educate your child about domestic violence, that the bottom line is that someone has no self control. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This has nothing to do with whether or not you burnt the toast or didn't pick up your toy. The person who's an abuser has an issue, and to explain that to a child, just as simple as that, just as
And
simple as that.
I think it's very important to be honest with your child, but then also to add the level of honesty in what you actually want to share. And I know one of the other times, you were on, we talked about having age appropriate conversations with your child and knowing your child and what they're able to handle. If they're witnessing abuse, verbal, physical, whatever it is very important to be able to have a dialogue with them, not just to sit down and talk to them, but have them engaged in the conversation where you're able to ask questions as well. How did you feel when you seen this or when you heard this? Let's talk about this. And we know this isn't right. And, I'm sorry you had to be a witness to it, validating their feelings as well. I
Mm-hmm.
think is important. And then I'm sorry, just to like go back in regards to how it does take a village and encompassing the whole community, like the holistic approach. That's what they do in positive youth development, doing a holistic approach where you're using, mentors, the religious sector, the medical sector, the educational sector, but to layer that with where we're at today, how does that work and how does that look when you have all of these different sectors that are very disconnected and sometimes divided, trying to help a child or even an adult?
That's really good, Ty. You know why I say that? I was just speaking with Kia about that type of thing, about the fact that there are thousands upon thousands of organizations and resources out there. We hear about nonprofit organizations, for profit organizations, agencies, and all types of programs. But it seems that there's uh, a mismatch there when it comes to matching the appropriate resources with the people who need them, right? So, how do we
Right.
bridge that gap? And this is where community kind of fills up the gap between individuals, right? So, let's picture that. We're looking at individual people and they are trying to get to some resources. And there's a whole bunch of red tape and other things, and sometimes misinformation or lack of access that stands in the way. But a community could help to bridge the gap. How many times have you had someone say, "Hey, I hear that this place is hiring in your community," right? Or they
Sure.
say, "Hey, this building has some vacancies if you're looking for somewhere to live." Or somebody might say, "Did you know that they had a summer camp up the block for the kids?" I mean, it's your community that helps become the bridge to these
Sure.
resources.
Sure.
So that is really what needs to happen. Pass on information, word of mouth. If you know something, say something.
I want to jump in there real quick, and like I said, we're going to be bouncing from topic to topic, but of course, there's always that segue. Um, COVID, and that was one of our very, very kind of first episodes, kind of, because it was kind of like the new 2020. And then I actually was affected personally. But in regards to what we're just talking about, people are stuck in the house. As we know from statistics, looking on the internet, maybe on the TV news reports, that because people are stuck in the house, there's more abuse, there's more this, there's more this, there's more this, because you're forced to be around people because of this whole pandemic that we have on our hands. And then you also mentioned teachers being the resource, but now we have school times in session, and we have these teachers out here that are vulnerable, who have families of their own. I don't know about you guys, but I know here in Florida, I do believe Georgia too, I'm not mistaken. We already started with school. My daughter, who's a senior, is going to school online. She's not going to school face to face, but there are kids who are still currently going to school. My question for you, just kind of segueing into that, is yes, the community can help. Yes, we need to be a part of that. But now you throw this other layer on top, and we have to stay 6 feet apart, wear your mask. Half the time, I can't even hear you when you're talking through your mask. How does that play another part in all this, and the stressors, and just dealing with this? Because right now, as a teacher, I want to help little Bobby, who looks like he might have been traumatized or something's going on, but I'm concerned about my own ass, because guess what? Little Robbie in the corner's coughing. He won't stop. You know what I'm saying? So you have so many things attacking you, especially when you have something that you can't see. Oh,
Okay.
go ahead.
Can I add on to that and
Oh,
hopefully
more.
okay, so you're asking about the resources as a teacher and how COVID has changed. So we'll set that there.
Mhm.
My layer to that is also with our relationship resources, because of what's been going on with the protests and the riots. It's divided friends and family. So now you have people, and I want to web it outside of just kids. So you have kids and adults that don't have that contact connection that they would have had with the school, now don't have that with their own family and friends, because they're feuding over ideologies and who was right and who was wrong.
Man, your layer added a whole other layer. I
But
wasn't
but
Is
I'm
that
glad
too
I'm
much?
glad that you guys are adding layers, because as we know, this is life. Life doesn't wait until you finish dealing with one issue to give you another one. It doesn't wait until you've resolved your problem before it brings on something else. And so we spoke about that with the episode 2020, the new normal. We said, and I said, there is no new normal,
Right.
in the way that one might think, in terms of, okay, things going back and everything's going to be regular. No, what we are going to have to do now is truly reevaluate what are we doing, because if we were uh, accustomed to being able to go to work and speak with our coworkers, maybe about our situation at home. I'm frustrated with my kids, my husband getting on my nerves, and coworkers were able to be a resource, right? Just by going to the gym, just by going to shoot a game of pool, right? Going down to the local bar and watching a game with some of the fellas, and using that as a de-stressor, and using that even as the support group, right? You're in the barbershop and you get a chance, or in the salon, but getting a chance to communicate and to be around people. Everyone is affected by the loss of that. Every person, children who are not able to go to school, children who are able to go to school, but now the field trip is canceled. Now prom is canceled. You were looking forward to that for 11 years or 12
Mhm.
years, and now you're not able to enjoy that. I mean, so what is the new normal? How do we get used to everything being different and
Mm.
it not being predictable? So we're not able to say that in 6 months things will be back to normal. Just be patient, just bear with us, and everything will be, because of coronavirus, and as well because of the swelling and the rising tensions and civil unrest. This feels like something that's continuing to erupt. right? It's not just the one volcano, it's continuous seismic activity that's happening. And how do you, what you guys are asking is, how do you get your footing when the daggone thing is still shaking?
Right.
So this is why it's important to refocus. So let us stop for a moment and not think about, do I have my toilet paper for the next month? Because okay, we're past that point, right? We got toilet paper now. We got that. But the reality is, what is going on in my life that right now I'm able to do something about? What is it that I'm wanting to do? If everybody would kind of look at their goals, look at what people wanted to accomplish for 2020, right? I see some
Mhm.
memes that say things like, my 2020 planner is of no use, that was the worst buy of the year because everything that I planned, it's out in the wash. So, but if we would look at the things that we had sought to accomplish at the beginning of the year or last year, how close are we? Are we on target? Do those things even matter anymore? Right? Maybe you
Mhm.
wanted to be the employee of the month every month for 12 months, but guess what? Your job couldn't survive and now it's closed. So
Right.
that goal is no longer.
Mhm.
So a lot of times we have to realign our goals with our reality.
Mhm.
How about if you have a goal that I'm going to go back to college and I'm going to build my business, and my business is going to be one where now with coronavirus, I'm not able to operate. So obviously, you would have to reevaluate that. But that doesn't mean that you can't be a business owner. But that doesn't
Right.
mean that you can't still provide services. It just means that you've got to do things differently. That make any
Oh,
sense to you
oh,
guys?
oh no, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always have the notes and stuff, so I'm just, kind of making it all, a segue. And I know we touched upon a couple of things there. You mentioned Ty, race relations and the civil unrest, per se. um and it's something that as soon as you think that it's dying down, and I don't mean dying down on our end, but you don't hear about it per se in the media, or you may not have seen anything recently on social media, boom, there goes another one, another, and now that sports season has been back into full effect, you have the different basketball players, they're advertising and they're promoting the Black Lives Matter. The football players are taking the knee and locking arms in solidarity. Excuse me. With that being said, it's interesting because this subject is dividing people. Um, Everything you said, Sean, that made sense, but when you incorporate so much, I noticed that a lot of people are getting depressed as well, and depression is very, very key at these
Oh
times.
boy. Oh boy, Kia. Oh boy. Look, I want. Look. Oh boy, Kia. You have said. Oh my. Let me tell you.
I didn't ask the question. Okay, go
Let
ahead.
me tell you.
Go
Mental
ahead. Go ahead.
health right now, as we spoke about in that initial episode, that mental health is affecting every person. Every single person. Now, somebody might think that mental health means that you're crazy, but it does not. Mental health means that you are able to function in a way that's healthy for you, right? Somebody might say, the way that I deal with stress is I get busy, I'm working, and that's how I deal with stress. And that might be good for you. You're able to function and it's healthy for you.
Right.
Someone else may work in the same way that you work, but it might be too much for them. It might be so much that it becomes obsessive, that they might start to have issues, even become manic about their activities, right? And then that might not be healthy. And so, what works for somebody doesn't work for another person, but please believe that every single person is affected by coronavirus, by everything that's going on with race relations specifically, because as you said, Kia, we're not seeing in the media the same frenzy of photographs and videos of senseless murders. We're not seeing uh, protests the way that we saw them. And of course, I'm not speaking about the violent rioters. I'm speaking about protests. I'm speaking about people who were advocating for things to happen. And we've seen some things happening, as you mentioned, with the NBA. We see players showing some form of protest, or at least uh, joining in with what the movement is. And the movement simply is not an organization, but is saying that people who are innocent should not be killed. And specifically, it's noticed and it's noted and it's filmed and it's shown that black people are killed. Specifically, we've seen it, right? So we're not going to speak about that anymore. We're going to move on with the news. We're going to talk about election. We're going to speak about maybe some other things. But guess what? People are still feeling fear. We talked about
Mhm.
mothers who are afraid for their sons. We talked about sons who are afraid for their lives, or just black people in general who have fear. Some people are angry. That anger for a lot of people has only swelled. It's only gotten worse. Where's Breonna Taylor's? Why aren't these people have been arrested yet? Right. So some people, and more and more and more and more, and so people are still angry. People are still worried, and people are still trying to figure out what to do. I have a difficult time. You guys talked about kids going back to school. I have a difficult time understanding the logic in the fact that school was shut down in the middle of a good time, right? And then now school is open and nothing has really changed with regard to the reason it was closed in the first place. And so I feel the same way with regard to the civil unrest, right? I feel like we're kind of going back to quote unquote normal, but nothing has really changed about what we were
To add to
speaking
what you
about
just
in the
said,
first place.
to add to what you're saying at this very moment, I actually feel, unfortunately, and this is even for our own community, there are people in a whole that are becoming desensitized.
I
Like, okay,
Yeah.
we've got way past like being desensitized. I think like
well, no, and meaning to the fact of like, okay, you should not resist. You did something. I really don't care. Like, can I go on with my life? I'm trying to book this trip.
but you know what? That's sad. I mean, and that for me, when you say that, I hear going back to mental health, and thinking about PTSD. What has this whole thing done to us? And then you can piggyback, what has it done to the kids? Like
It has
Shawnette
done the
said.
same. It has done the same thing to us that it is doing to the kids and every person on an individual level. So of course everybody's experience is different, but everybody has been traumatized. See, this is what post-traumatic stress disorder is about, or experience symptoms of that. It's saying that there has been a traumatic experience that either you personally have experienced or someone close to you, even vicariously, a person can be traumatized by watching George Floyd be murdered on television. Causes post traumatic, very simply, can cause post traumatic stress disorder for anyone watching, for anyone hearing about it, for anyone watching someone else crying about what happened, from anyone watching someone who's angry about what happened, from anyone who's watching someone who's desensitized to. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I say that everyone is affected by it. And whether we admit it or not, we need to start to turn this tide around where we're focused on mental health. We have to become more healthy, because the crisis and the trauma has not stopped. Just as you said, the fires are still burning. Everything that has happened to cause the issue is still happening.
I just want to add just really quick, Kia. Like, I know we're talking about, the mental health and the abuse and, what things have looked like for everyone. But I also want to say that, on my end, I've also had the great opportunity to gain a support system. And she's my co-host. Um,
oh,
yeah, I mean, you have to think about it. It was
taken, yeah,
during the time COVID started, and then, we talked to each other about the podcast, and our relationship grew. and became closer. So I do want to put that out there, that
Definitely.
even though we do have an umbrella of concerns and situations that's going on, that we still do have that positive side,
Well,
and
and
able to recognize it, because sometimes people don't always recognize their blessings. They're looking for something big, and that big piece can be just that connection that you gained.
well, it's interesting that you said that, and I love how the everything is like connecting the dots, because yes, it's true. Because of this whole COVID thing, because of what was going on, it was definitely something that made us closer. And then you're in New York, and I'm here in Florida, but we literally almost talk every day through a text or something, you know. And I'm like, oh my God, I love my cousin. um, but with yeah, right. But within saying that, you know, just all of our connections, we've been able to just call on that support group, and you've actually been able to witness who are the riders and who aren't. You're like, well, wait a second now. When we was having fun, you was riding, but now things are hard. Where are you? You know, you looking under in the window, out the window, like, well, where are those people that you used to ride with? And you could really see during these times, even if it's a scenario of you kept your job but someone else lost theirs, or maybe someone's sick and you didn't check in and call and see, you just kind of been doing your own thing. I definitely appreciate the connections that I was able to build. I wanted to say, since you brought it up, they statistically, they said that black fathers have been in the house more, the ones who were, I guess, the deadbeat guys. I know we had an episode on Father's Day about, you know, black fathers and great parenting, but I want to say the COVID per se has happened to connect families together that weren't normally there. And we're not talking about the bad ones and the ones who are just kind of don't need to be together to begin with and are detrimental to each other, but the ones that are like, you know what, I need to do some refocusing and some renewal of my own self. Let me get my family life together and see what's going on. So that definitely has increased. And I'm definitely blessed to see that as a community, that we are kind of connecting. And I think because of these civil unrest and these different things, you also see just recently, there was a family, they bought 19 acres in Georgia, if I believe, of land. And I wanted to ask you, Sean, that. So basically, they said they wanted to do their own community, their own everything, black owned, black business, everything is just, you know, our own. And it got so big, and everyone knows about it, got on CNN. A lot of people were saying, white businesses said they're going to pull out and they won't help and they won't build on that land because you're being isolated. Oh, you want to do black owned stuff? Well, what about us? And I wanted to ask you, do you feel something? Because we talked about when Charles came on, we were talking of subjects about, you know, doing for self and those things. Do you feel that something that like that we should have kept to ourselves? Do you think it should have been an advertisement? You know, this would be something that I guess you would be really proud of, that you bought land and you want to do for the black community, but now they're getting so much backlash for wanting to do this on their own. How do you feel about this?
I think that I don't know if I should say whether or not they should have kept it to themselves. I think it's wonderful to share this wonderful news that they were able to get together and acquire this property, and that they're doing something that helps them to accomplish their goals. So I think that's great. But I think what people are doing, we start to, as people, we start to judge what somebody's intent might have been. And oftentimes people are not great at expressing what their intent might have been. But I think, and I'm not certain, but I think that some people's concerns might be that here is a community that is isolating others, and if it were the other way around, if it were an all other race community that was built solely for that community, and if it were worded in the same way, then how would that have been received? And and I think it's just as simple as that. It's as simple as, what is their intent? Are they building this so that they can keep other people out? I don't see anything wrong with creating a community, right? There are communities that you might be more comfortable in. There are communities that you might not be so comfortable in. But I don't see anything with creating a community. We see that happening all over the world. So, what is the issue? The issue comes when In my opinion, the issue comes when someone says, you can't come in here, you're not allowed, but I'm allowed to go to any community that I want to go to, but you're not allowed to come here. Now we're starting to get some type of biases going on, and I think that might be what people are starting to comment about.
But is that what we're saying? And I just say we. Are we saying we don't want you in our community, or are we just saying black owned? It's black owned. Because I think that's a difference. And I also want to say, I'm not that I'm happy COVID happened, obviously, but the positive part of it is it's forced people to find comfort in an uncomfortable situation, and it's forced them to grow, and it's forced people to think outside of the box. So things that they would have never done before because it was
Hmm.
easy access to everything else. Like you were stating before, now you have to like really regroup, sit home, reevaluate, process, and then execute, what your goal is. And it's giving us that time to be able to do that. Obviously, some of us can have and will take advantage of it, while others haven't and won't, to each his own. But we've been awarded that blessing, I say, that we've been, able to have that insight into thinking past our norm.
Hmm. I agree with that. The fact that there's been great benefits as an outcome of a terrible situation. As we said, when trauma happens, when crisis happens, a lot of times it brings people together. Funerals bring families together. Accidents bring people together, right? And so we, as a world on a global level, are experiencing a crisis, and so it is causing people to call my grandma when maybe I wouldn't have called her. Now that I can't visit her, now I miss her, right? When we can't have a glass of water, we are so thirsty, and so it's caused people to have a thirst for things that it causes people to have a thirst for things that perhaps they took for granted. And so I'm really happy to see that communities are being created and that people are starting to think outside of the box. People are going into businesses and other ventures that perhaps they were, as you said, complacent in their lives before. But things have been shaken up. Everybody's life has been shaken up. And where the dust settles and what you do with that is dependent on you. But I'm loving the fact that you're having this particular episode because it's talking about renewal. So it's not only refocusing, right? We're talking about renewing. Renewing what? Renewing your mind. You have to rethink the things that you were focused on before. You've got to rethink on whether or not the relationships that I have are adding to my life. Are they adding to my
Yes,
life or are they taking away?
if it's not, we're
Right?
gonna talk.
Gia.
I have no, and y'all know me very well. And I gotta say this: when my train, right, is on the track and it's going off, if you don't got that ticket to jump aboard this train, I promise you, I'm gonna leave you all in the dust. The cold, the cold when the steam engine, and it'll be,
That's
and
all
it's,
you're gonna see.
you're gonna have that smoke. And I always tell people I could show you better than I could tell you. You know what I'm saying? But that's gonna be a whole nother topic there. But we
We have Jesse, black owned and female black owned. These need to be supported and encouraged. It's not taken away from anyone else. Thank you for that, Jesse. Like for me, I'm into supporting our people. I'm not saying that anyone else shouldn't be supported. If people have a good service and a good product that you can't find somewhere else, you do what you have to do. It's life. Just don't try to take away from the progress that we are allowed to have, that we shouldn't have to ask permission for, period.
I want I want to go ahead and change the subject real quick. And I don't like talking about this individual myself, but it definitely has to be talked about, and that's our president currently, uh President Trump. And I can say this, and this is my own personal thing. me being prior military, regardless of what my political view was, I'm independent, but regardless of what my political view was, you always have to respect the chain of command, even if you agreed or you disagreed or whatever. But I just never had that. You ever people say, well, I hope he dies. I hope it this. I don't wish death on nobody. I think that's just karma just waiting to get at you. But at the end of the day, I remember we had a podcast episode, and we had a lot of different guests on our podcast. And it was a great topic. It was talking about our vote, because at that time, Biden had picked his vice president that he wanted to run with him, Kamala Harris. And everybody was in an uproar. For some people were happy about it. Some people were like, oh, shucks. Everybody had something to say. But as the days go by, Mr. President Trump, I guess I'm trying to be politically correct.
Continuously say his name.
Sorry, I'll just say Mr. T. Then I might be discrediting the other real Mr. T. But anywho, he made a comment, and I just wanted to mention it. It says here, Trump, while he was in an interview, and this is on Forbes, Trump says he will negotiate third term because he's entitled to it. Now, we all know that he talks out of the side of his ass sometimes, and or most of the time, and people don't know if he's coming or going. But that's scary, because I remember during the episode we were talking about he threads the whole dictatorship. He threads that line. When he actually was running for office, I remember he wanted to grab him up by the vajayjay. He was laughing at people who were crippled. And I knew that those things there were just going to not get him elected as president. But as you can clearly see, he is president now. How do we, as a community, how do we deal with this presidency, this election overall? Because forget about COVID, forget about the stresses at home, forget about all those things. We have a leader, and you would think that the leader would be somebody that we could kind of look up to in some fashion. How do we deal with what's happening with him trying to block our vote? His governors trying to sabotage us in the states that we're in to block the vote.
Yeah, but unfortunately it's more than that, Kia. Like, it's outside of the actual voting and that real political piece of it. You're encouraging acts of violence against targeted groups. You're creating and igniting another level outside of what he should be doing. Like, again, everything we talk about, there are so many different levels. As a president, I think there are some mental health things that should be looked at, in my personal opinion. And then again, you look at what he's actually putting out there. We've had a lot more violence that's kicked up. Now you're putting even that limitation on the federal agencies and racial trainings, very specific racial trainings that pinpoint. So he's saying, so in my head, when I hear something like that, you're talking about not being able to get them, implement or facilitate them, and the funding for organizations that rely on that to be able to do that in their workplace, and now will not get funded. So now you're talking about diminishing even the awareness of people who want to know what's going on and be sensitive to other cultures.
Yes, and I tagged you in that when I seen that. Another layer to add to that, when I was just like, wow, I don't know you guys or the audience has heard of the 1619 project. And I was basically talking about when the first slave ship came. Well, basically, he has implemented something, or I think he's going to sign an executive order that the schools will lose funding if they are going to be talking about slavery in that form. Because nowadays, it's funny, I asked my daughter, well, what did you learn about slavery? And she was like, oh, well, some black people got captured, came over, they were forced to work, the end. And that's their little premise of what they got and getting taught in the school system. But now you have schools are like, hey, we're going to really talk about the real deal, the reason why all this stuff started, for the money purposes, just kind of get into the real.
But the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And he literally said, no, we're not talking about it. And we're putting an executive order out and these schools will lose funding. I mean, when you hear, Shawnette, people say, and then some people will be avid about it, like, I'm voting for him, and I think he's doing the right thing, like how do, like, I know we keep talking about mental health and refocusing and renewal, but I literally I'm lost for words when I hear people support somebody who would do the things that this man has done. Like, I know they say Barack Obama might have done some things, and Bush and Clinton. I mean, they all have something on their record, but how do I deal with it? I need the help. Is she still?
There she goes.
Uh-oh.
She just go ahead.
Okay. Uh-oh. Go ahead.
Shawnette,
Wait,
leave it off.
no, I am here. And how do you deal with it? I'm laughing. I apologize for laughing, but I'm laughing because that is probably the question that absolutely every American is asking. And even some people who are not here in America are probably asking, how do we deal with this? Because, as I've said earlier, what is happening to us is affecting people on a global level. What happens within American politics does, in fact, affect foreign affairs. And so many people are asking just that question. As you guys spoke about with the episode with voting, a lot was said, a lot was understood, and yet still a lot was not resolved, right? Because what I think I hear you guys saying is that, and we said this in the first episode, we're talking about a systematic issue, right? So with a cycle of voting, as wonderful as it truly is, it takes more than one cycle. It takes more than one election. It takes more than one precinct. It takes more than one blackout day of the month that we're gonna support black businesses, right? And so economically, what you're saying is that these people hold the power to allow or disallow, and this is what oppression is, right? This is what disenfranchisement is. These people hold the power economically to allow or disallow people to be able to thrive as a people group. Okay? So you are asking the people who are oppressing to please, sir, stop oppressing us. And you've asked
I'm
for
not.
years and nothing has happened.
Mhm.
You say you're done asking. I heard you say
I'm
that a
not
couple
asking.
episodes ago.
I've
You're
been
done
I've been
asking.
saying this
I like that.
consistently. I never changed.
Yeah.
I'm not asking.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
know
so
I have
that's
to
really
do
what it is.
that
You're not asking. People now are not asking. People are realizing what's necessary. It's necessary to develop some sort of group economics. It's necessary to no longer depend upon the oppressor to eat, to have housing, to have education, and in some cases, unfortunately, even to have lawness or law, to have law, because currently there is a sense of lawlessness that
too.
voters are indeed supporting. There are voters who are supporting certain schools of thought that you may disagree with or I may disagree with. But there are voters, and we see this, right? When we see the
Yeah.
runoffs, we go, why is it a runoff? Why was that even close? How this happened? But there are people who are voting. And what voting does is it allows the people to use their voice, right? Wasn't that the intent of the vote, of the democracy, that we, the people, get the opportunity to use our voice? Well, it's not just how many people, it's who is in power. Who has the power? Because you can use your voice and I can use my voice, but if you do not have power, because I have the ability to oppress you, then your voice doesn't do what it's intended to do. So I think there needs to be what we're going to say now? We're going to say a reshifting,
Yeah,
reshifting that there needs to be in terms of the way that we think, but also this is something that people are scared to think about. How can we dismantle a system? How can we rebuild a country that was built upon this mess?
right.
The
We don't
riches of the
know.
country came from, the resources of the country came from the, right? So now what do? Some people have said, let us separate ourselves, let us go to a different land. And some people have done that and been successful. Others say, why should I go anywhere? I'm going to stay right here. I'm going to buy land, I'm going to build, and that's what they're doing.
My analogy
Right?
for like all of this is, okay, it's chess, not checkers, right? That part of it is not my analogy, but we have a chess game and you have the actual board. The chessboard never changes. That's the system. It never changes. However, you can change what the actual pieces look like. Sometimes they may come as like shot glasses. But they're always the same pieces. So it's like what you're saying, dismantling, like, how do we change the board to actually change the game? Because we keep setting up different pieces on the
Okay. I've
chessboard.
got it. I've got it. I've got it. How you got to change the piece as an individual, meaning that each individual person has to change their mind. I can't collectively go out into the street and say, hey, people, let's pool our money together and let's build something. But if the people see that I'm building something, they'll be more apt to join me in doing that. She's successful in her building. I want to join that. Right? So I say, get started. Do it. Do it within your home. Do it within your family. You want to teach and start group economics. Start it in your house. Start a pool where
Right,
everybody puts a little something together and so we can go on vacation. Start it within your family. Start it within your friends, with your coworkers. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of different get money programs. Some are called susu, some are called the flower and the water and the, right. You're seeing a lot of these things, but I like the fact that people are starting to think about what can we do collectively, how, and I
right,
love it. So I say, do that. Do it now. Do not wait for the masses to get on board. Kia said she's getting her buses moving on. She's not waiting. So we're not able to wait anymore for the rest of the family to want to put in and be able to purchase the property. Do what
right.
you can as an individual to make that change. And as you make the change, you have influence, someone else changes. That is really what is happening with our president. Our president is an influencer. And just
Yes,
like we see with social media, with the Instagrammers, with other people, we are seeing that our president has the ability to influence people based on his opinion. There are many people who either have that same opinion or are able to be swayed or convinced that this is the right opinion. So so it is with any other influencer. And so what I say, what can we do as a community is be the influencer. Be the change that you want to see. You want the young men to stop sagging, make sure your young man is not sagging. You want the young girls to stop twerking in the street, make sure your young lady is not twerking in the street. You want to be what you want to see, and it will have an influence. It'll start, it's a trickle effect, but it'll start with you. It'll continue with your children. It'll continue with their peers. It'll continue with the community. It will grow. It's a ripple effect, but you've got to start with you. And you got to start now.
yeah,
Yeah, wow. It's interesting that you said that about being an influencer, and just to throw a joke in there, you say you don't want your son to sag, then as a father or the mom, don't sag yourself. But it says, you don't want your daughter to stop twerking. And I was like, oh wait. And I thought about myself because sometimes I'll be but I don't do it in the street. I
you know, do it in the street.
I might be on the house, you might hear a song or something, whatever the case may be. But it's funny because even those little subtle things, if you think about it, your kids will pick up on it. And yeah, I have the two adults, but then at the same time, I do have a little one. And it's funny because you don't really see until you sit back and think about it how you're still indirectly influencing. So even if as an adult, I'm playing around, I'm like, oh, this is the latest jam or whatever. At the same time, my little one's like, what's mommy doing? Well, maybe it is okay. And now, definitely, I don't want to send her. And I'm glad you're saying that because it kind of puts that reminder in my head. I don't want to give her mixed signals. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm ready to jam out or whatever, let me do that away from her. So then she's not, well, what the hell is mom doing? You know? So I definitely thank you for using that word influencer.
And I love the fact here that you recognize that we are all influencers in our home, the way that we dress, what we consider decent or indecent, what we consider a healthy meal or not healthy. We are
Yep.
influencers. And so the fact that you recognize that with our children, the same thing happens with mental health. How do our children learn that it's okay to cry if they've never seen their parents cry? Or how do they learn that it's okay to express yourself when you're upset or you're frustrated if they've never seen us do it? So, in that same way, we are influencers. If when we become upset, we become violent, guess what? We taught our children that this is the way that you
Right.
handle this particular emotion. So there are lots of people. I'm hopeful that in the future, you guys, in the near future, you guys will consider an episode about suicide, whether it's
Yeah.
Suicide Awareness Month or week or what. Please do that because currently there are a lot of people, specifically young people, who are committing suicide. Of course, people of all ages, but what did we say? There are added stressors that are happening now that people have never had to deal with before, and people simply do not know how. So I say to all of your listeners, to all of you influencers out there, when you're speaking with someone, let them know that they are safe to share with you. You may not be able to help them. Be honest and say that I cannot help you, but I'm glad that you could share that with me. If you give someone an outlet, then that makes a whole lot of difference, right? It gives
Mhm.
them an opportunity to know that they've been heard, and it gives them the strength to know that they have power in their voice. So that's the start of making the change within yourself. It's starting to release and express those emotions. This is your journey to mental health, right? And it has to start today for everyone, whether you feel like you've been affected, whether you feel like you've got symptoms of PTSD. If you, I don't feel anxious at all. I feel just fine. I still say it's time to reevaluate. Am I happy in my
Yeah.
life? Am I
Yeah.
where I want to be? Are there things that I'm worried about? Do I feel helpless in certain areas? Do I have support that I need? Ask yourself these questions, and if the answers are not satisfactory, then I say it's time to do something about that.
Wow. Wow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Ty.
I just want to give a quick shout out to the people that I can see. Liz, Cash, Mira, say what's up, and Jesse. Thank you guys. And for the listeners that are tuning in later, I can't say mine. Hello, we not actually, but we appreciate everyone for tuning in and being avid supporters of Mothers Unfiltered. I'm always happy to have Shawnette on. um, I've been tired lately, needing my cup filled, and she always brings that insight and that calmness and that comfort. So, Shawnette, I really, really do appreciate you once again taking the time out to talk to us and our listeners. And for the listeners, just to piggyback what she said about the mental health, like don't be afraid. There are resources out there. Look on the internet. Call, I don't know if it's 211 311 to find out where your local resources are for mental health or even drug abuse, domestic violence, rape crisis, and the list goes on. um, Everyone at home dealing with kids and the stresses of kids, just please always remember self-care as well. 2 minutes, just even if it's 2 minutes to sit in the bathroom, put a sign up on the door, let the family know this is my time. Let me have my 2 minutes, because without good mental and emotional health for you, then you're not going to have that good mental and emotional health to be able to support your family in that way, not,
No, beautifully said. And I just want to leave also again thanking Shawnette coming on, just because whenever I talk to you, either if it's on the show or if it's just on a regular conversation, you always bring that sense of calmness, but also you bring me awareness. And a lot of times you could just be in your daily everyday living your life, and then all of a sudden, like the title is renewal and refocusing, you just have to kind of refocus, like, wait a second, this is what I'm doing. It's funny because you mentioned the word, I'm going to use the word again, being an influencer. And Ty would always tell me, she's like, hey, this podcast is so much bigger than what you thought it was going to be. Like, I always said, if just one person would listen, just one, but she's like, wait a second, YouTube is watched all over the world. If you look at the views, it says 104 views and blah blah blah. So somebody's listening. And at the end of the day, when you have an audience, regardless if it's 1 or 101, you are going to be indirectly influencing, and people are going to be talking off on the sidelines and making their comments and their viewpoints. And we definitely want to be able to bring topics to you guys where it's beneficial and you're getting the resources. You're correct, Ty. 211 is the number for United Way, and that's an international number, throughout America. I don't know the number overseas, but definitely throughout the United States. 211 will get you to any resource that you need, from if you needed housing or food or these different things. Definitely all three of us on the panel definitely have those resources. So if you ever want to come out and say, hey, just a question offline, that's what we love to do. We love helping people. And it's so funny. I've been attracted to these two lovely individuals just because they share a passion that I have. And that's always giving and helping others and putting our egos to the side and seeing what's good with other people. With that, I want to just thank everybody who's listening now. There are people who were going to listen, but on Versus right now is Patty Bell and Gladys Knight. And I was like, man, how can I even listen to this and watch it? But you know what? I know that sometimes they start late, so I'm going to try to jump on there and see what I could do, because those are them divas within itself. But thank you. Thank you once again, Shawnette. We love you.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's truly my pleasure. Please have me on again. Thank you so much for all your listeners. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are great influencers. It's not about changing somebody's mind, it's about changing your mind. So thank you so much for allowing me here today. Have a good
We
one.
love you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Love you guys.
Like and subscribe.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.